Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Crit Chat, the podcast for Crit Happens, where we chat crit with Sam and Pip. And today we are welcome Jake and James onto the panel. We will be talking about being a new player and how to get into the game. So if we could, the three of you gentlemen could please take a turn to just give us a brief introduction, introduce yourself, and how long you've been playing and how long you've been in the Crit Happen server. So Jake, if we could start with you, please.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, my name is Jake. I've been playing D&D for coming up 2 years now. I play both online and in real life with a number of different groups. I came across Crit Happens, I think a good few months ago actually, and sort of looked around for a while for an opening to a game, and I joined one not too long back, and it's been going great. So that's my story.
Okay, thank you, James.
I'm James. I'm 41, and I've been playing for 27 years now. I think 1997 I started with playing. It was Dragonlance. Yeah, and I think I joined Crit Happens about. I think it must be about 8 or 9 months ago now, something like that. Yeah, been involved in a few games a lot more recently, and running one of my own campaigns as well now. So yeah.
Thank you. And Jacob?
Yeah, so I think I started playing D&D properly when I joined the server, really. Like, I dabbled a bit, but the fair it was properly time playing, it was when I joined this, so that's hand in hand, and that was around February this year. So that's however many months that is. Yeah, so still relatively new, really. And I play a bit in person as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I personally would consider myself a new player. I've, again, like you, Jacob, I dabbled prior to joining the server, but I've only been playing properly, certainly in a campaign, since about February. And how about you, Pip?
I only started playing in February when I joined Crit Happens, but it very quickly became my hyperfixation. So now
Yeah,
everybody's stuck with me.
absolutely. Okay. So I think in recent years, Dungeons and Dragons has enjoyed quite a lot of publicity, sort of outside of the normal group of players. So we've had the movie that's come out. We've had Critical Role, which has just kind of been going on, and then Vox Machina as well, which has just released their third season on Amazon Prime, I think. So, and Baldur's Gate as well. Baldur's Gate not to be discounted. So there might be quite a few people out there who are sort of thinking, you know what, actually, I wouldn't mind giving this a try. I don't mind a piece of this, but they might be unsure about how to start. I mean, if you look at it, there's a lot of very nerdy people who seem to know all of this terminology, like what's a DM and a GM, is there any difference? There's a lot of things like even just the word crit. What's a crit? What does that actually mean? Making a first character. There are, with so many source books out now, there are just so many different combinations of species and classes and subclasses, and there's homebrew content. So it might be quite confusing for new players to come in. So, if we could have a little think back, maybe Berkeley, I don't know, it's not Berkeley, sorry, James. Do any of you remember, like, were you nervous about starting off? What was it that you felt that would make you nervous about joining, and how did you overcome that, finding a game?
I think for me, what I was quite nervous about was like the role play side of things. Like I felt like I'd get into like the rules and that. 'Cause obviously, I play like games I think for my entire life pretty much. So my most worrying about was that the role play. Like, do I need to put on a voice? Do I need to create like outlandish character kind of thing? But I think for me is I think a lot of people are overly worried. I think which is quite natural. But when I first started my first sort of group, that's sort of most people sort of in the same boat, and it's everyone was just like themselves, but just playing the character kind of thing, but using their own voice and that. So I think if you're able to get into a group, even if like a drop-in session kind of thing, just be you, but just roll dice, and you don't have to come up with some crazy voice or be over the top. It's just, yeah, I find that quite easy just to get into. Just be myself. I'll just say what my character is doing, and I say 99% of DMs will be fine with that, as long as you're at the table being respectful and enjoying yourself and respectful of other players. Everyone's fine with that. So yeah, once I overcame that, it's been like, yeah, just hyper focus on D&D, and now I love it. It's great.
Yeah, I found that when I first started playing, it was very much like the trying to get past the awkwardness of like, I am sitting pretending to be another person doing these things. And it's trying to get past that. And I found that if I just focused on the dice and everything else that's happened, the rest of it just kind of came naturally, to the point where I know that we do it quite a lot now in our Fandalva session where we role play a lot. And it's just like, it's almost like you are that person now. So you just kind of get past it, and suddenly it's like, I'm going to, and it's no longer my character, it's me. I'm doing it.
But yeah, it's not acting, so to speak. Like, so you don't have to come in, like, if you obviously, like I say, you can do it, and eventually you will. Where, like you said, Pip, where you'll start going, I do this, and you may, get into it more. But when you're getting into it, you don't have to look at it like Critical Role and go, oh, I have to be a proper actor and do all this. Like, you just say, oh yeah, my character picks this up and attacks something or whatever, and then that's enough. You don't need to be professional or anything
I
like
have
that.
to have a British accent all
Yeah.
times.
That's why I sort of like, obviously, for those that have played with me, especially Sam, where we played Heist, because I've played for so long, I sort of, my characters are ridiculous. And I go well over the top, acting, RP, etc. And the reason I do that to an extent is to try and make other people feel comfortable. When they look and think that guy's absolutely ridiculous, they feel less worried about themselves, sort of getting into character and doing a bit of role playing, because you've got someone there that's acting like a bit of an idiot, to be perfectly honest with you. But I love it. It allows me to a lot of the time, like characters and stuff, or like from experience, a lot of people, it's almost like an extension of themselves. So a lot of the sort of personality and the perks and stuff of the character is sort of like an exaggeration of what the person already is, and it's sort of like providing a space where people can sort of be the character that they want to be. And if I can make them feel more comfortable about doing that by going a bit over the top myself, then I go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I mean, do you feel that for someone who in particular is concerned about role play, that they see that as a barrier, that, maybe they've seen Critical Role, and yeah, those people are mostly professional voice actors and actors, so their role play is kind of off the charts. So if somebody's sitting there thinking, well, I feel a bit awkward about trying to role play a character, in front of other people, would you say that perhaps a few one shots are easier to start with because there's less emphasis on having to get to know yourself and other characters?
Yeah, 100%. It's sort of like you don't come up with a fully developed character straight away. You sort of grow into it. So, for example, that character I'm talking about in the campaign, Kate's campaign, we played it in a one shot that I played it in a one shot that Jacob ran for us, and sort of just came up with it off the cuff. And it's probably in 27 years of playing, probably one of my favourite characters I've ever come up with. And it's sort of like, as it goes on, the character develops, and I grow more into it and come up with an idea of who he is and where he's come from, etc. Although the fact is that he doesn't actually know where he's come from. But it's yeah, it's sort of like, and you find that with newer players as well. They sort of come in and they're quite quiet to begin with, and they gradually grow into it, and it's just sort of throwing yourself into it. It's Everyone's there to do the same thing at the end of the day, so you shouldn't be worried about what other people think, because everyone's there to, for the same reason. You know what I mean? It's sort of like obviously I've got my own plumbing and heating business, but I'm a frustrated actor at heart, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like you said, everyone's there to do the same thing. Everyone ultimately is just a bunch of nerds hanging around in a room. You're not gonna like no one's gonna start making fun of you or whatever. Like everyone is just exactly the same in that respect. Just wants to play a fairy or a gnome or something like that.
Alternatively, they will make fun of you, but it'll be for things completely unrelated to the roleplay aspect
It'll
of
be
what
because you
you're doing.
rolled 3 nat 1s in a row. That's what they'll make fun of you for.
Or you don't know how the mechanics of magic missile work. Yeah, I like the fact that the roleplay aspect of it is like it's a non-issue when you're playing. You spend all this time like watching Critical Role and obviously seeing the fact that these like 8 voice actors sit and they put on like perfect British accents, and like they can change their voice at the drop of a hat, and they can sit and play like 6 different characters in one episode. And it makes you like panic a little bit where you're just like, do I need to be that good at it in order to play? And it's like you walk in and you sit down and there's just 3 people sitting there being like, yeah, no, like this is how I talk and this is the voice my character has, and if you don't like it, shut up. And that's pretty much how I came to it because I can't do accents.
Neither can I. I've tried a couple of times. Like nobody goes out like session 2. Like this is just who he is now. It's like that's like. What I found is that after like played a few characters now, is that it's not necessarily like like voice or role playing. It's trying to give your character like characteristics, but just even like simple ones. Like like are they quite a serious character? Are they quite sly? Just give them like that sort of like tone, so you can like keep your own voice and all that sort of stuff, but just try and play them a bit more in character. Well, of course, that's totally optional. You can say, my character is just so like this, and he's just does this, or he, she, they, whatever, and everyone's fine as long as you're playing the game and having fun and engaging with the story. Like the other guy said, no one cares. We're all here, we're just a bunch of idiots having fun playing a game. That's what D&D is.
Yeah, like ultimately it is a game. Like you watch Critical Role and you get. I think some people might get bogged down with needing to have all these arcs and stories and all that. Where, in my opinion, it is purely just it's a game. Go roll dice, kill things, have fun, poke the objects, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because I first got into D&D through Critical Role and like other like YouTube things. So I think for me, I somebody did a lot of research before going into stuff. So I kind of like try to learn the rules as much as possible going in. And so I would give advice to new players like that is don't go with expectations that high and just try and learn the rules. And one thing I found is that develop those like starter kits where you get like a set of dice and basic rules and even like character sheets to go along with that. So I actually found that really helpful because you can just go through it and sort of like read rules like online or whatever it is. And so you go into your first session if you're able to find a group as prepared as possible. Just I found that really useful for me.
Yeah,
A lot of groups will help you as well. Like
Of course.
if they know you're a beginner, like a good DM will guide you through character creation, etc. And they'll know the rules, so you don't have to, sort of thing.
yeah,
It helps if you do know a few rules, you know how your character works. But yeah, because the DM's generally got 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 other people he's running a game for. But yeah, most of the time in terms of combat, how the game works in itself, a good DM will know that, or they'll make something up on the spot, which is generally what I do.
That's where I found things like D&D Beyond and Roll20
yeah,
so helpful, is that before I like got in a game and I was just like, I don't actually understand what the fuck D&D is. So I was sitting, I just went through D&D Beyond and just made characters just to see what a rogue is and what a wizard does and what's the difference between a warlock and a sorcerer, and just messing around like that. And then obviously, because things like D&D Beyond give you it as a step by step, this is what you're doing, this is why you're doing it, this is how you do it. It just made things so much easier because then I was like, oh, well, I use charisma for spell casting, so I need to make sure my charisma is quite high. And that was really helpful. And then obviously when it came to actually making a character, I kind of knew what I needed to do.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. It's like knowing what you can do as a character is the most important. Like you want to go in and play a warlock, you don't need to know what a wizard does.
Yeah.
So just learn your character. That's really
And then
helpful.
obviously being able to sit and go through from like level 1 to level 20 and be like, oh my god, at level 17, I can do this.
But
If
you'll
my
never reach that.
character if my character makes it to level 17 without dropping dead, I will be so proud of myself. But until that point, I can look forward to one day doing a level 17 one shot and using that feature.
So, I mean, if you've got someone out there who's like, okay, well, I'm fine with the role playing, I'll either do it or I won't. One of the other potential barriers I could possibly see, certainly it was something that absolutely terrified me, is looking at a character sheet. And I remember that someone, when I made my very first character sheet, someone who was experienced in D&D did like take me through making this character sheet, but like he got about a third of the way through and I was like, I'm lost. I'll do what you're telling me to, but I don't understand any of this. And then, there's this set of like 7 scary dice that all have different numbers of sides and things like that. So what would you say to anybody that kind of looks at these things and thinks, this is a lot, I'm never going to get this?
Well, what I told my new players when I DM'd in person, I turned around and said to them, if you don't really know what you're doing, obviously I'll help you, but use D&D Beyond because it'll just do all the maths and all that stuff for you. And like you can sort of learn as you go, as like Pip said, like it's generally like just do it on D&D Beyond and just copy it down on the physical sheet if you're doing it in person or print it off. Because I think it makes it so less daunting to just have something that's made for you rather than going, oh, you need to do this, and then you have to take this dice away after you rolled this many and stuff like that, and adding things up. As much as the maths is relatively simple, I just think it's complicated to know where everything goes. Yeah, so I'd suggest you only using something like D&D Beyond to make your first character sheet, and then you'll pick up the idea then of what attributes to what and how the things are calculated.
There is another website if you're completely brand new to it, and even D&D Beyond, you're not 100% sure what it means. Basically, there's a website called Instructables, and that's got a step-by-step guide that tells you and it explains all like what your like ability scores, how they affect like the play, what they actually mean. It's like backgrounds, classes, race, everything. If you look on there, it's got a step-by-step guide, so you can't go wrong with it. Basically, it's a really, really good tool for people that are brand new.
I wish I knew that. I'm still fully convinced because I can't actually remember that far back. But I played a one shot with some people I worked with, and that was my first experience. Like they took me through creating a character because I was like, I did it on this website, and I don't know if I did it right because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So they went through it with me as well, and that was really helpful. But then we were playing this one shot, and I'm like 90% sure now that I was adding too many numbers to all of my rolls. So like I'm pretty sure that I was adding like my strength modifier and my proficiency modifier plus my strength save modifier plus, and I'm just like I'm sitting and I'm just like, there's no wonder I was rolling so well. I'm adding like 12 to every roll. So yeah, something like that, like instructables that would just like tell me what everything means and what I have to add when would be really helpful. Because when you look at a physical character sheet, obviously D&D Beyond, like Jacob said, does the maths for you, and that's great when you can't do
Yeah.
maths. Great. But if you're sitting and you're playing physically and you've got the character sheet and you're just rolling the dice and you're like, there are so many numbers on this A4 sheet of paper. I don't know what number does what. It's terrifying because especially if you're a new player, you're sitting and you're just like, what if I do this wrong? Is everyone going to think I'm an idiot?
Yeah, well, I'd say to that is like generally the one thing you're well established as a new player. Any DM will just go, roll me a check and add this. Do you say like roll to hit, add your strength bonus and your proficiency modifier to that, and tell me the result. It's as simple as that. Is that most DMs, if they don't help you, then shit. Yeah, just like any DM should tell
DM
you.
bashing, just where we meant to start.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, like, the good thing is as well with D&D Beyond, when you create campaigns, obviously the DM can go in and see the character sheets. So if someone's unsure,
Yeah.
you can just go. DM can go straight in there, go right. This is what you need to do. This is what you're looking for, etc.
That's always what I thought about TTRPGs in general, more so than just D&D. Is just the DM should just teach you the the rules. That's partially what they're there for if you're new to it. Because in general, they tend to be the most eager one to play. You know, they go, "Oh, I'm going to play this game. I'm going to run it. I'll invite my friends or even strangers and become friends with them." They should turn around and tell you to an extent how to play. Obviously, you can learn for yourself, read the books and whatever, but if they're running the game, I do think partially it can be on them to go, "Oh yeah, that's how how this rule works."
It's sort of like the best way. Like, you could probably vouch for it, being newer players yourself. After 2 or 3 sessions, you've got a general idea of how it works anyway.
Yeah.
Even after the first one, you're picking up stuff constantly. But then, like I say, I've been playing for 27 years now, and there's still things. Someone says, "Oh, this is how the rule works." I'm like, I've played it completely wrong for the past 15 years. So everyone gets it wrong, even like people that have been playing for years.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like D&D in of itself is quite daunting in that respect because it's got quite a lengthy rule book, and if you're new to it, you could look at that and like you look at the player's handbook and go, "Am I supposed to read all that?" And then you might look at Xanthars and Tashas and fizz bands and everything. You just go, "That is loads of information." But what I'd say is for D&D in particular is just shrink it down. I'd recommend the new player probably only play with the player's handbook for their first character. You don't need to read all of it. Like I said, your DM should know most of it, and they might be new as well, so you might get things wrong. But in general, you pick things up as you go. Like if you're playing the paladin, just go to the paladin section of the player's handbook and pick based off that. It'll only be a few pages really, out of all these others because it contains all the classes. Like you don't have to sit there and read cover to cover. It's not as daunting as it makes out, and as James said, you just you pick it up after a session or two really of the major basics, and then it just develops from there really.
I'd say a good tip as well is if you're unsure and you're a bit daunted by the rules, etc. First campaign or first one shot, play a fighter. Play a
Yeah.
fighter, and it sort of eases you in. It's probably the easiest class to get started with. No,
Fighter.
no,
Hit it. Hit it again.
exactly. Obviously, with the subclasses and stuff you can get from extra handbooks, it does make it a bit more complicated. Stuff like rune knights and stuff like that. But if you just play like a straight, even I don't know, you go something like a champion or something like that. It's really straightforward, and you can learn and pick up, and you can watch spellcasters and stuff like that, and see how things work, and pick it up as you go along. And then when you feel ready, you can jump into being a bard or a ranger or whatever class you want to go for. Really,
I think it's nice as well because if you sort of join if you join a campaign, for example, generally speaking, you're going to start from a low level, like level 1, and you're just so limited at what you can do at levels 1 and 2 before you pick a subclass, that there's really not that much that you can. It's not very overwhelming. You get one attack, you get a very limited set of spells if you're a spellcaster, and so then you can build it up nicely from there. If you're completely new and you jump into a level 15, 21 shot, then that would be overwhelming. It overwhelms me. I don't look at all my spell list and go, blimey, how am I going to choose what to do on my turn? But if you're starting at a very low level, then really actually there's not that much to it.
it's literally to begin with. Especially like even if you're a wizard, it's like I've got 2 spells. I cast these,
Yeah.
cast this, cast that, and first level spells aren't particularly complicated. But it's mainly just right. I attack it with my longsword. Roll a d20. You either hit or you don't. Then you roll the damage, which is I think on a longsword is a d6 plus your strength modifier.
I was going to get bogged down in the weapon mechanics.
You were going to be like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a
Not this
D4.
episode.
No, I was
Yeah,
going to
no,
say, is it versatile and stuff like that? But we don't need to worry about that sort of
don't frighten anyone off.
No.
stuff.
I think I'm not 100, like, I think for so long when I first started playing with, like, Jack and Vandelver, that I didn't actually pay attention to what the damage was. I just went, do I hit him? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, good. Like, the damage meant nothing to me. It was, do I hit them? Do I not hit them? Have I done what I needed to do? Good, great, we move on.
I mean, you'll probably end up killing them anyway because you're probably fighting goblins out of like 7 HP.
So, I mean, I think as I mentioned, one of the more popular things that's been around sort of to promote Dungeons and Dragons more recently is Baldur's Gate 3. You know, it won Game of the Year. A lot of people play that. So if that's kind of somebody's only real brush with Dungeons and Dragons and they think, oh, actually, you know, this looks all right. What similarities and differences would you say there are between that game and actually playing?
I think it's quite different. A lot of the
Yeah.
mechanics are completely different.
Yeah, it gives you a nice idea about what it's like, and you can just about like what you call Baldur's Gate is a game in every sense of it. It's a video game, so you can break video games quite easily. You know, you can stack a bunch of boxes on top of each other and climb a tower, which is absolutely not something you do in D&D. Like so, it's like what I'd say is don't like. So if you play that and get into it, great, but don't think like you're an expert just because you've played Baldur's Gate. Like just and like try and take the game for what it is, like trying to describe it. Like if you're playing the TTRPG of D&D, like think about things slightly more realistically in that sense, rather than like in a video game where you might. Well, this is more Skyrim than Baldur's Gate, but you know, you put a bucket over the NPC's head and then you can rob them blind. Like that's not going to work in a TTRPG because the NPCs are way more fleshed out because it's the GM controlling them, and you'll just take the bucket off their head and go, "What are you doing?" Like you know, yeah, you can't just like do things like that, like try and cheese it and stuff. So I'd say just take it if for the tone of what it is, what the GM wants to play. If they want to play quite a serious campaign, just take it in the spirit that it is a serious campaign, and I think you'll end up having more fun with it.
Loads of the spells don't work right.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's hard to English, isn't it? Sorry.
I actually had a campaign where someone new joined who came from Baldur's Gate, and they wanted to play Gale from the game, and it's like, well, no, it's not that world. It's not that. Like, here's our campaign, and you're like, oh, I don't know what any of this means. It was a bit awkward, but so I think some people coming from Baldur's Gate they want to play the characters from there. I think that's what D&D is, and it unfortunately didn't end up working out with that person. But I think, yeah, if you like Baldur's Gate and enjoy like the mechanics, like go away, do a bit more research into actual D&D because, as everyone said, like it's not quite the same. Like it takes the same like theme and like overall like umbrella mechanics, but it has been changed and adapted to be more of a video game. Because as Jacob said, you can like optimize it and break it and like do like, oh well, I know this is coming up, so I'm gonna do like X, Y, Z to beat this boss or whatever. Whereas D&D is very much just completely random. Like the dice do decide the outcome, and you just roll with that because it's kind of fun. Even if you fail, it's fun sometimes. Whereas in Baldur's Gate, you can't really fail because if you fail, you die and you start over again. So yeah, I think that was a good starting point. I would encourage people to do more research into actual like D&D rules and mechanics and what to expect at a table and in a campaign.
Having never played Baldur's Gate because my computer runs like trash, I can't comment. But from the from
You
like
listen out much, it's not very good.
it only won Game of the Year, whatever.
Yeah, it's
From like obviously the world is the world and everybody streams it on Twitch and on YouTube and everyone and their grandmother can go and watch you play an entire game of Baldur's Gate. And from what I've seen online, it's very much like it's got aspects of it. So obviously you roll the dice and you have to do things, but it's like you lose the kind of storytelling, I feel like, that you get in D&D because D&D is a very collaborative game and everybody adds a little bit and somebody says one thing and then you reply and then the DM's just like, oh yeah, well this NPC just comes out of nowhere and throws a bag at your head, whatever.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that, but I feel like Baldur's Gate, I know you can like have multiplayer on it, but I feel like it loses that because you're just sitting looking at a screen playing a game.
And you're also limited by what the game will allow you to do. Whereas if you're playing 5e, D&D, you're limited by your imagination and also what the DM will allow. But in my experience, most good DMs will let you do anything as long
Yeah.
as the dice rolls good enough. You can do what you want.
Yeah, like there'll be stupid requirements. Like you need to roll a nat 20 and still somehow have a plus 26 modifier.
Mhm.
But if it happens, you can do it.
Yeah. Or like a good example of that is like so with like Baldur's Gate, like you wouldn't be able to say just climb a random wall because again it's a game. Like as far as like I'm aware, you can't just click on the wall and go, I want my character to climb that. Whereas in D&D, you could then you just say on TTM and go, I'd like to try and climb that wall, and then they go, okay, roll this. Have you got a climber's kit? Blah blah blah. So yeah, it is a lot more. There's more to do in a actual thing of D&D. You just have to consider it that it's not something to be broken like like a game or played in a sense of like because it's very I don't know it can be a bit like WoW in that sense of you've got your party and your control and you know like it. I mean, I'm not don't play MMOs that much, but you know, you've got like your hotbar and things like that, and it becomes more of that sort of gamey style thing, whereas D&D's, you know, can be quite different to that.
Is it open world or is it quite railroady?
It's open world.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a mix. I'd say it's a
Yes.
mixture.
yeah,
It's
Mm.
a mixture of railroady and there's open world bits, but the game doesn't. And obviously, there's a lot of side quests, but the game sort of doesn't progress unless you follow the
yeah.
path you to take, basically.
And obviously the NPCs, there's only so many of them in that sense of there's only so many that'll give you proper responses and there's only so many you can talk to and that'll give you things. And the same technically could be said for D&D, but you could also, you can ask them anything and then your DM will turn around and give you whatever the response to that might be. So there's a lot more depth to it in that sense.
I was going to say, don't give new players those sort of expectations because the worst thing is when they go, "Oh, we're going to talk to this NPC that I've literally just given a name and no backstory or anything like that."
Yeah, it's like you walk into it's not going to be that you walk into a tavern and the DM says, "Oh, there's 3 people sat at this table and there's a person sat at this table," and you're like, "I go and speak to person number 3," and they're just like, "He doesn't acknowledge you."
Yeah.
It's like that's not going to happen in an actual game of D&D because then you're just like, "Well, why is it like? Is he blind? Is he deaf? Is he dead?" And it's like it just spirals until you've got this backstory for Jimbo the bard who's selling carrots on the side because he's run out of money and
I'm gonna start doing that. You're gonna get a one where like a one sentence NPC response from most
it's
NPCs.
the same response no matter how
Yeah.
many times you click on them.
Yeah. Until you eventually get frustrated and kill the NPCs.
Well, I think as well though with Dungeons and Dragons, you can, things can happen. There's more interaction between you and the other player characters than obviously there is in Baldur's Gate between the characters that the game gives you in your party. So, and sometimes really, really amazing things can come out of that. Like, for example, when we were playing Strahd and we all went and had a pub quiz for an episode, you know, stuff like that can happen. Or in Fandelver, we've decided we're going to sit around for an hour and play a drinking game as the characters, and things like that can happen as well. And I think that's really good. It's like you said, you're limited by your imagination, by the DM's imagination as well.
I think that's a really good way to get new players sort of more comfortable with the role play aspect of it as well
Mm.
because you're just like, so we're just going to sit here and chat for an hour, but we're going to do it as though our characters are doing it.
Mm.
And it stops that sort of really awkward forced like, oh, you're traveling from place X to place Y. What are you talking about on the road? And it's like, I'm really like put on my. Whereas if you're actively playing a game, like, what the fuck is up with that? Or like rollies or something, and you have that opportunity to be like, okay, I can stop and think about what I want to ask James about his character or about Jake. and then somebody will ask you that question, and you have the chance to sit there and be like, actually, what would my character want to say in this situation? Like, what would my character's opinion on this be, and what do I think about this that would reflect on that? And I think that's a really fun way to do things. And then a pub quiz is always a good idea.
Okay, but equally, there are, places like Reddit and YouTube where Reddit stories get read out, and you might, as a potential new player, see these horror stories about, railroady DMs or people with main character syndrome, and just awful things that have happened. So, how typical would you say that actually is? Like, should new players be worried about their first experience being with one of these mad people that you hear about on the internet?
Well, I'd say like look out for like signs or whatever. If like it's mostly down to people skills and stuff like that. If you meet someone and they're just acting like a knob, don't interact with them further. But like, I don't think it's that common. There's always two sides to those stories. I think a lot of them end up getting way like blown out more proportion than what they actually would have been. But yeah, like generally speaking, from my experience, it's fine. You just be a nice person. You'll make sure you interact with nice people, and everything. Yeah, is fine.
I'd say, like me personally, in 27 years of playing, I've never come across it. Not once. I don't know whether I'm lucky or whether that's sort of like a general indication of what most games and tables are like. But at the end of the day, if you've got a good DM and it's another player doing it, then he'll deal with that or she'll deal with
Yeah,
that. And if it's the DM, leave the game, find another game.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, don't hang on to a bad game of D&D because you're I can get you might really be desperate to play because you've been looking forward for ages, but ultimately you're just ruining your own fun if you're not if you're playing a game that you just don't like playing. Just leave, as James said, because that'll end up be better for you, and there will be other games out there. I mean, you can obviously, it depends on your own schedule and the type of game you're looking for. But I mean, D&D Beyond's forums have 1,000,001 people looking for players. Roll20's got loads looking for them. If you don't want to play online, you can look at things like your local game stores, Facebook groups, Reddit, Meetup. Like, there's all these kind of websites out there that will be people advertising clubs to go to and stuff like that. If you're in university, there'll be societies, that kind of thing.
There's also paid games. I know it's quite a big commitment for new players, but with DMs who are been doing it for a while and you can review them, so you have that sort of star rating with DMs, and you sort of be reassured that it's actually they're quite reliable. I'm actually in one myself, and it's played the best group I've played with because everyone's sort of really committed to it, and even there's even some newbies to people who've been playing it for years, so it's got quite a good mix. So I would say that's also an option, although it is quite a financial commitment, but it's been worth it from my point of view. But sort of going back to the original question, how common is it? I don't think it's very common at all. I mean, I would have been playing for 2 years, and I've only had one negative experience. But I imagine all these horror stories, it can seem like they're quite frequent, but no one's going to post on Reddit. I played a game of D&D. It was fine. No one's going to do that. So you're always going to get the extremes, usually the negative, because they get more attention and more clicks. But yeah, as Jacob was saying, if you go to a table and something's not right, whether it's players or the DM, just leave because that's not the table for you. Because unfortunately, there will be some people out there who just aren't very nice, but I think that's one in a million of people. My own personal negative experience was with my first sort of DM for my first campaign, and he was a very railroady DM. I have this vision, and nothing's going to deter me from that. So our rules meant nothing essentially, and it was a bit unfortunate. But I still played with that group, just minus the DM. We also left and thought, if you want to run this game, that's fine. It's not for us, and we all just left. So I said, yeah, just join the group if you can, see what the experience is, and if it's not for you, there's loads more out there.
What I would say, the best DMs as well, the ones I've played with, they're very good. They give the illusion of choice. So
Yes.
you think that you're making a decision, but it's the decision they want you to make.
Yeah, but as long as you as a player feel like you're doing something and have, like I said, because after you don't know it's an illusion because you think, oh, do you want to go down the path to the right or path to the left? If you pick the left, you think that's what you're doing. DM's going like, haha, it was an ogre in both situations, But
haha, regardless of what you chose, I was going to pick something out of this hat.
Yeah, it depends how you run the game, but definitely like the dungeon crawls are very like that because whichever way you go, you'll find some kind of danger, and it'll be appropriate to your level and stuff like that. So yeah, there's less real choice in there, but you still ultimately have fun. I mean, and you can always stand around and go, "I don't want to do this dungeon," and you leave, and then you go out into the world and find a different one.
And make the DM cry.
Yeah.
I spent 6 weeks planning this dungeon and you just walked away.
And that's why everything's random. There are loads of roll tables out there that you can just randomize it all, and then you just throw something in front of them.
Yeah.
But it's
I-
nine times out of 10, the thing you can rely on is for the party to do something you've not planned for at all.
Yeah.
You think I've got so many different things I've planned for, and they'll choose none of them.
D&D sessions tend to be so long. Obviously, we usually play like 4 hours plus. That you, even as a new player, I think you figure out very quickly what you do and don't like. So if you sit down at a table or on Discord or on Roll20 or however you find a game to play, and you're 2-3 hours in and you're thinking, I'm not having fun, that's not the kind of game for you. Like whether it's too combat heavy or literally dungeon crawling and it's right, okay, you walk out of this dungeon, the mayor gives you 6,000 gold and you're on to the next dungeon. That is mind numbing to me. Like the thought of that being how I have to play D&D every week, every fortnight, every month. I actively I'd hate playing the game after probably like a month. Whereas like if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm really into this, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, but I'm really enjoying myself, stick with it and see what changes. But I think it's a game at the end of the day, and there is no D&D game that is so desperately wanted to play, except for if everybody wanted to play Critical Role or Dimension 20 or something, then yes, you would stick through it, through hell and high water, because that's what you want to do. But there's no game that's like so good and so amazing that you have to force yourself to like it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the massive thing that people kind of forget, where they're just like, well, if I leave this game, I might not ever be able to play. And it's like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth forcing yourself to do something you just don't enjoy. And if you find yourself on a wider argument for that, if you find yourself just not enjoying D&D, there are plenty of other TTRPGs out there, both high fantasy and not high fantasy. So don't give up on the hobby in general. You'll find something out there for you if you are at least mildly interested in rolling dice on the table.
There are some really, really bad systems though, as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I do think communication is very important in D&D in general. Like if you're looking for a game and a DM says, "Oh yeah, I've got a table spot open," it's always good to ask, like, "Okay, what does your campaign actually involve?" before you go into it, because DM should say, "Oh, it's high exploration, high role play," and if you're a bit nervous or that's not really your thing, you just go, "Okay, that doesn't sound like it's for me," and then try and find tables that are a bit more what you are looking for.
If you find a good table with a good DM, they'll cater to what you like, basically. And they'll make sure, even if you've got one player that likes combat, another player that likes RP, and so on, they'll cater it or alter so there's a good balance of both, sort of thing. Because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a story. You're basically collaboratively working together to tell a story, and the DM is the person that sort of judges it, adjudicates, applies the rules. You do whatever you want in that story and the development of your character, and obviously working towards an end goal. But what happens along the way is entirely up to the players, and the DM just facilitates it.
Yeah, I found that as a player, going from like a new player to sort of, it's like I'm now just past my beginner phase now. I feel like you grow into the story and get more comfortable. So what you may thought you liked, or maybe you thought you didn't like, you might sort of change that opinion as you go along and get more comfortable. So like one of my groups, we were all complete strangers, and we play online. So you're always going to have that like, sort of awkwardness with new people at the beginning, like especially in the RP sessions. But now after like even just after like a few weeks, but we played for like nearly a year now. So we all have like RP sessions for like session after session, like no combat. And at the beginning of my D&D journey, I thought if someone said to me, "Are you going to role play for like 5 sessions in a row, which is like what 20 hours almost?" I'd be like, "That sounds like hell. I'm never going to do that." But some of the most fun sessions I've had, just like like drinking games or like just random exploration or jokes. You make in the party. It's so I'd say even at the beginning, just keep going with it, and you'll learn and get better at things, and you'll enjoy the whole process at some point.
So I think that's the thing with 5e at its heart in terms of the combat and all that. It's the same. The combat is very, very repetitive in the end.
Yeah.
So without the RP element and even the DM when they're running combat encounters, without them sort of adding to it and RPing some of the monsters you're fighting, sort of thing, it can get very, very repetitive very quick because you roll a dice to hit. No, you hit, roll the damage, etc., and so on and so forth. So it really is like you bringing the characters to life that makes it enjoyable for everyone. So, like I say, don't be afraid to go as mad as you want with the character.
And embrace silliness. That's the key to, I think I found to D&D. Even just like little things like I remember my last session, like we spent like an hour, like two of our characters just like doing like a little like makeover kind of thing. Like one of us like got like new glasses because they always kept rolling low in perception, so that was their new character arc is to get glasses. It was like, and it's so stupid things like that that make the game like so fun, even though that's not in the rules. It's just like have fun with it.
Well, I think mention about people maybe being shy about RPing and stuff, and I think that that is one of the benefits to kind of joining an online community like Crit Happens. Like if you want to join a session, if you don't want to use your camera, no one's going to force you to do that. One of the campaigns that Jacob and Pip and I are in, one of the players we've never actually seen his face in sort of 9 months of playing, and that's fine, and it doesn't inhibit his ability to RP or our ability to interact with the character at all. So there is that, and obviously in a server like this as well, you can kind of observe games that are going on and see whether any of these people you might vibe with or want to play with, and you can even post in the channel and say, look, I'm looking for a game, I'm looking for a one shot, is there anything coming up, that sort of thing. Obviously playing in real life, there are differences. Do any of you feel that there's one or the other has any greater benefit to new players looking to come in, or is it very much a personal choice?
Well, I personally like it's a weird one. I enjoy the people I play online with more, um, because I don't know, just like you for some reason. But I prefer the game in real life. Just the thing of rolling the dice and stuff like that. I think it's a lot easier to resolve certain things in terms like online there's potentially tech issues and you end up like trying to you can't hear somebody and things like that, your internet might drop, you've got, because if you're using something like Discord or your audio is coming from this one source, so if someone speaks over each other you've got no chance, things like that. I mean, I don't encourage you not to speak over each other anyway, but at least in person you could at least try and you can hear from around you and stuff like that. Yeah, I do think in person is probably the better actual experience of the game, but it depends on the group that you find. If you find a better group online, you probably have more fun online. It's all about who you play with, I think.
I think it's easier to play online for beginners as well
Mm.
because there's less of the awkwardness. There's still, like I say, 4 or 5 strangers, but I think it's when you're in a room, like physically with 5, 6 people, you're less inclined to go along the RP route than if you're online, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do think online it's easier for beginners, especially like to find a game, to get past that awkwardness and to play it as well, because you will have a lot of tools that help you play it online. You know, like you using say Foundry or Roll20 or Owlbear or whatever, all the other virtual tabletops can all do the maths for you. They'll do auto apply damage and all. I mean, I'd argue that it's nice to do that for yourself because that's what the game actually is. But if you find that very overwhelming, at least it's there to help you out.
What I'd say as well is obviously, like you said, with the resources online, it makes it so much easier. Because if you're playing in real life and someone says, "Oh, I want to use this spell," and you're like, "Right, 1 second,"
Yeah.
unless you know the spell, like it's just going backwards and forwards. Unless you find someone that knows the game really, really well. But if you can find someone that knows how every spell works, then let me know because I'll pay them.
Even when I play in real life, like I still use D&D Beyond and use that
Yeah.
as my character sheet, so I can just like, look up what everything does. Because I do play with people who prefer like the handbooks, and it is a bit slow sometimes. I go, oh, how do you do that again? Hang on, what
Yeah.
page is it on? 250 something. It's like, okay. But no, I play both online and in real life, and I found that, as Jacob said, it's mainly the group that makes it for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, you know, if you're rolling physical dice or clicking a button in D&D Beyond or whatever it is. If you're having fun with your group, that's all that matters. Because I've had
Yeah.
bad IRL sessions, I've had more positive online sessions because I think people are more committed in, I think. But yeah, it's a mix really what table you're at. If it's not vibing for you, just whatever it is, just leave. But yeah, it's the group that makes the table.
That's the thing. I think with actual physical dice, it's more an accurate representation of complete randomness because I'm convinced D&D Beyond hates me.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Like
But I
there's
think
so
Yeah.
many times when I roll like to create a character, because that's all I really do on D&D Beyond, and I have too many characters and I pay Wizards of the Coast too much money. Anytime I roll for a character, I can't remember the last time I rolled above a 12.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's weird? Like, I actually think so. Online is true random, and what you don't want is true random. You want your, you know, the slight little change of how you roll the dice makes it roll the 20 or something like that. I mean, it's
So
I'm chatting
if I
nonsense,
twist
but
my
yeah,
wrist, it'll roll a 19 this time.
yeah, like whereas I don't know, like D&D Beyond's just got like a thing going 1 to 20, the computer will spit it out, and yeah, I don't know. It's just nice to roll that dice and get the real. I don't know. You feel like you're doing something rather than just clicking a button.
What,
And going back to what I'd say with the spells and stuff as well, just as a tip, it's good to, if you've got your spell list, to maybe, or at least spells that maybe you use a lot more, it's good to just write down sort of what they do in like your notes, or have a little like cutout card or something like that of your spell, and then without having you don't have to flick through a whole handbook. You can just go shatter does that, you know, and then you can just yeah, I don't know, just something I found useful.
again, there is an online tool, and I can't remember the name of it, where you can create a custom spell book, and you add all the spells in, and then you just print them out, and you've got the little, you know, like you can buy the spell cards from
Yeah,
Wizard. You've got them printed out on a sheet, like 9 to a sheet sort of thing.
that's cool.
I can't remember the name of the website now though. And it's also, you can do it with for encounters as a DM. You can add creatures and have stat blocks for each, like different creatures on there as well.
Yeah. Be good if we knew the name of it.
It would be fantastic if I could remember the name.
We'll insert it here during editing if we ever figure it out. I like being able to just sit at my computer and rot in my house overnight
Hmm.
and play with people and just have fun pretending with people from all over the country and all over the world. And I think that makes a massive difference to playing in person versus online, is that like in person's great, but I will highly likely only ever play with people from my area.
Mm.
Whereas playing on Discord, I've got friends now who are in the States. I've played a couple of one shots with people in Australia, which was weird because it was 7 o'clock in the morning for them. But like, I like just if I exclusively played in person and I was like, no, I'm only going to go to this game shop in my city and do this, I would not have I mean, I don't have many friends anyway. I'm going to keep saying this every episode, but I would not have as many friends from as many different places as I do. Like, I wouldn't have the opportunity to go to London for a weekend and spend a weekend with friends in London and go to Liverpool. And one day we're going to go to Texas. But like that opportunity wouldn't arise if I didn't play online.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe so we can go to Texas.
I'm pretty sure in the last podcast episode it was Vegas at some point.
But we're crowdfunding for something
Like,
eventually.
America. We are
Yeah.
crowdfunding for America.
Conventions are a good thing as well for that sort. So you can maybe play a one shot at a convention and you'd meet people from all over the country. That's quite a nice middle ground for meeting new people that you wouldn't otherwise normally meet and still get to play in person. Obviously they're a bit more, you need to be able to spend the money to go to the convention and where it is and what have you, but there's bound to be at least one that pops up in the country that if you're committed to going to, you'll be able to go to.
If you really want to make the financial commitment, you can spend $3,500 and spend a weekend playing D&D in a castle.
I have looked at that and then thought, no, that's ridiculous.
I looked at it because one of the castles in the UK is a 20-minute drive from my house. So I genuinely looked and almost emailed them to be like, if I was to not stay in the castle, would it still cost $3,500? And then I was just like, no, I couldn't. I genuinely couldn't cope with that. Like, I'd want to stay. I'd want the full experience, and I'm not paying $3,500 to stay.
So would you make the rest of us pay to stay in the hotel in the castle while you pay less and then leave?
Yeah. That is exactly what I would do, Jake. I have no shame. I also have only one spare bed. So it's whether I like the most out of the lot of years, I would also pay less. But yeah, but like they as a company do it all over the world. Like they've got castles in America that they do it in, and they've got I think 2 or 3 castles here. I think there's a couple in Europe. And it's like that obviously is not, I don't think, aimed at new players. But I think if you had the money and you were like, I want to play D&D and I wanted to be in a castle and I wanted to all be very on brand with what I imagine D&D is, that's the thing for you.
That's the thing though, they put, oh, we've got this DM coming and this one. I'm like, I've never heard of any of them.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's the big thing, isn't it? It's like if like I know you've been playing for 27 years, James, but like I know like 3
Matt
or 4
Mercer,
DM,
probably,
Matt
yeah.
Mercer, Brennan Lee Mulligan, Abria Iyengar. Like I know the ones who are big on like YouTube, but then I suppose there's probably even like scrolling through TikTok. Like my TikTok is now full of like different D&D campaigns where they obviously record what they're doing and they all play in person and it's all set up and they've got their own like little bunch of followers. So it's like they're not a small community, but they haven't quite hit critical role levels of fame, which is never going to happen when you haven't got the connections in the industry. But I just think it's nice to find those like big channels that do that kind of stuff because it just shows you all the differences that you've got. You don't have to rely on big voice acting production that Matt Mercer has or like the visual effects that Brendan Lee Mulligan always has from Dropout. And it's nice to just find the ones where it's literally 6 friends sitting around a table with their cameras on going, yeah, I roll to hit with a sword. You can tell I don't play melee characters because I'm like, I'm gonna hit them with a sword, I think. But yeah, it's nice to have those like comparisons of like lots of different options and lots of different kinds of games.
Yeah. In terms of helping like finding a game as well, if you're in the UK, there is a company called RP Haven, which have been springing up. There, you do have to pay for it, and I don't understand how all of it works. You would be better to read for it yourself. But yeah, um, but there's a slight more guarantee with it. So you like a GM or a DM will go in and book out a block of weeks with them, and then you pay the company money, and then you get a place at that table for a certain amount of weeks. So it can help with, if you can make the schedule that's there, it's a guarantee that the game's going to run. You're going to have committed people and stuff like that. It could be like maybe a nice middle ground between, instead of paying specifically for a DM, you're paying for a company to facilitate the place to play, if that makes sense. So yeah, something like that just popped into my head.
Yeah, just Google like game groups near me or
Yeah,
anything like that. It's always an easy starting point.
yeah, genuinely, just Google my city D&D, my city role play games, anything like that, and you're
I'd,
more or less bound to
I'd
find
be
something.
careful with that search term, mate.
Crit Happens are not responsible for any porn that appears on your computer whilst googling D&D games. You may or may not end up on some kind of watch list.
Yeah, searching for role play online is not advisable.
I think the biggest thing to remember is that for the most part, even if you're coming together with players who are experienced, if you come to a table, certainly if you've come through it via it online, then everyone's going to be in the same boat. Very few people will likely know each other. So even if they're experienced players, you don't necessarily, you're not familiar with the other players around you, and I think that kind of puts you all on a level playing field, to a degree. Like when I first started playing in the Fandelver campaign, it took me a bloody age to take a single turn in combat because I was trying to think about all the permutations. What does all this stuff do? Like I've got, what on earth is a bardic inspiration? Who's it best to go to? That sort of thing. Trying to play optimally so that I didn't look like an idiot at the table. And it got to the point where it became a thing that I took so long on my turns that Jack even suggested I get a T-shirt that says that I was waiting 20 minutes to take a turn. But I don't think I'm quite as bad at that now. I'm into the flow and I generally have a rough idea of what I'm going to do on my turn. And I know what these spells do and I know what this stuff does. And you do just pick it up by osmosis.
Yeah, definitely. As you go on, you will get quicker and quicker. And if you're, a DM and you're DMing for a bunch of new people, I'd always give that a little bit of lax of let them take a bit of time to figure out what they're doing. If they're a few years into it and they're still doing that, I'd probably get on them and be like, speed it up, you know what you're doing by now.
No. It's like canonically, every turn takes 6 seconds. It does not mean that your real life turn has to take 6 seconds.
I think that's a new rule that should be implemented.
Yeah, it's got to take 6. I think you should have to act it out. If you can realistically do it in 6 seconds in real life, you can do it in game
Right,
without
well,
rolling the dice.
there goes the mobile feat because I want to meet the person who can run 110 feet or whatever it is in 6 seconds. There's no shame. Like Sam said, you're all on equal playing field playing online. And I think sometimes even playing in person, like everybody's still got that kind of awkwardness of, especially if you're starting in a new campaign versus like joining halfway through one or like just as one starting. And you've got that equal playing field. But I think you've just got to remember there's no stupid questions. There are some stupid assumptions that lead to not so stupid questions, but they tend to be funnier rather than mean. But there's no stupid questions, and all you have to say is, "I'm new, help me." And somebody will, whether it's the GM or another player who's just gonna go, "Oh yeah, well, because you're this character, you have the option to do this." Obviously, there's a difference between somebody helping you learn your character and how to play the game versus somebody going, you need to do this because you are X, Y, and Z character, and you are a cleric, so you have to exclusively heal people, and you are a bard, so you do nothing but talk about sex and make sex jokes, and you are a rogue, so you are like Batman and you hide in a bush all the time. Like, you don't have to have characters fit into those funny stereotypical molds that everybody makes jokes about. So any person helping you should be able to like help you play the way you want to play. So it's like if you want to walk up to somebody as a cleric and just punch them dead in the face, do it.
It's
Your god might not be happy with it, but you'll figure that
Yeah,
out
like
as it
there
goes.
might be some resounding role play, but it's a perfect opportunity to get used to role play because there will be repercussion.
Yeah. Oh, like I'll always I've come like so even if you're like a murder hobo, which people put a bad name on, if I was a DM, be a murder hobo, but just be prepared that there are consequences to being a murder hobo. You will get attacked by guards or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, do what you want, but it like in real life, there are consequences to your actions.
I'm sorry, but if you attacked me with guards when I was murder hoboing, it's just more murder. Like
Hmm.
you're just feeding into what I've asked for.
Not my guards. They're all actually gold dragons that have been.
But no, I think sorry, one shots personally are a really good way to get started. Especially if
Yeah,
you can find like low level one shots where they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna play level one. It's like that one shot's gonna be like nothing,
yeah.
but it's fun. And I think that's a good way to get started because gives you a chance to get into the mechanics, but you don't have to commit to anything.
Yeah, you just let you go. I'm showing up on this night. And I'm going to play this character, and then you can take that character and put it into another one shot, another one, and then into a campaign if you find one. When I first started, I was quite resistant to the idea of a one shot because, like, no, I want to find a campaign, and that is it. And eventually, I found one, but like,
And now you're stuck with it.
yeah. Whereas now I would say, one shots are fine. Like you still get the fun of playing D&D, and especially if you have maybe a hectic schedule, you're unsure about whether you want to play D&D in general or play with these people. One shots are a great way to test them.
And it's a good way to play with all the different classes.
Yeah.
For example, if you're exclusively a spellcaster and you really want to figure out how to play melee attack characters, then every time you play a one shot, you play a different melee character.
Except you only play the ones that also cast spells.
I was a magic fighter. I
Yeah.
was a barbarian once. Barbarians can't cast spells.
There's one that does something magicy. I
That's the
can't
one
remember.
I was, and I was just
Yeah.
a bad barbarian. So there we go.
I don't get how you can be a bad melee character. You go in and hit things. That's it.
When you don't hit things, it's
Yeah.
your problem.
Although if you do play a one shot, like a low level, like level one, don't play wizard because you'll die immediately with like 6 HP. You'll just die. Go, that's just crap.
Like, yes, the same HP as a commoner.
Yeah.
The lowest dice is a D4. You're going to get hit at some point for half your health.
Yeah.
But
It
yeah,
also
just
gives you the opportunity, like with Columbo, it gives the opportunity to try a character and see. Then you can take that character into a campaign and just go nuts with it. And it's probably, to be fair, it's probably the least optimized character I've ever made, as you lot are probably aware.
That is probably a really big thing. Is do not worry about going into any game of D&D and optimizing your character. Like if
Yeah.
you're playing for the first time, do not panic about making sure that you have the highest strength stat and you've got your mobile feat or your alert or you've learned all these fun things and you've got all your ASIs that mean that your charisma's 20 when you're a level 1 and like just have fun. Just build what you want. If you want to build a character that's story based, where everything is focused on what you've decided your background is or how you're going to play your character, that's how you build a character. If you really enjoy min-maxing D&D characters and you want to spend your life figuring out which character can have the highest AC, the highest movement, who can cause the most damage in one turn and who can have the most turns in one turn, if that's what you find fun about D&D, go for it because I can't figure out how to do it to save my life.
Yeah, I remember one of the first characters I ever made. I was sitting there like, I think I want to play a warlock, and then I'm sitting there googling, which race or species as it now is the best for a warlock, and it's like you don't need to do that. No one's gonna sit there at the table and say, "Oh, you're playing a warlock. What'd you pick a dwarf for?" Like, and if they do, then leave immediately. Like,
yeah.
you don't need to worry about min-maxing or fitting in with players who kind of quote unquote know what they're doing. Like most of us don't care what we're doing, we just want to have fun.
It's
Yeah.
exactly like again with Columbo. Every time he levels up, I'm like, right, what can I pick that is the most useless feature?
The chef feat.
Hey, don't max the chef feat.
I want to make a character with a chef feat, but I just can't bring myself to it. I'm not a min maxer, but I'm sort of half in between. Like I do like to optimize it to a certain degree, because it's always nice to do a lot of damage or do something crazy good in the game. But yeah, I am like I would recommend people focus more like the background of the character and actually make it a character rather than just a stat block.
Yeah.
Because especially for like a campaign, like if you go into a campaign and you play like a min maxer who doesn't care about RPing, it can feel a bit hollow. Like, okay, but what is your character? He goes, oh, my character's Jim, and he's like the best fighter ever. Like, okay, but what is your character? That's the thing I think is important to think about.
What I'd say as well is, especially like I've made a character to be like an investigator, and he's got +8 to his investigation and stuff. But that doesn't matter if you're rolling 2s and 3s all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's the point. You could build the most optimized, fighter in the world. You can still roll a 1 and not hit. It
Be a
doesn't,
level be a
D&D
level
beyond
10
still guys.
rogue, and then you can't roll below a 10.
You have to get to that level first, though. If you're starting level 1, you're screwed.
No, just come in, just say no, I'm a
I am
level
like,
10 rogue.
that's such a big thing as well, is that I found when I was attempting to find games, and obviously you got to the point where because there's not enough DMs to player ratio online,
Mm,
you kind of have to like bid for your place in a game.
yeah.
Like, don't worry about it. It's the weirdest fucking thing. But I found that there were people who were just like, obviously the DM would be like, it's going to be level 1 campaign start. This is what it's going to be like. There's going to be a bit of roleplay, a bit of combat. I'm kind of trying to like mix it up so that it covers everything. And you'd have people who'd be going, well, my character is the king of all of the fighters and he's won this massive. And I'm like, it's a level 1 character. Play it like a level 1 character. Like, if you're going to walk in and go, this character is a fighter who has won the biggest fighting competition on the planet, why can he only do 3 points of damage at the maximum?
Yeah.
Like, how did he win this competition with that much damage and that shitty little sword he's got? And
Yeah.
I think it was Jack and Andy said that they literally, when they play low level characters, they play them as low level, where it's like, I'm a cleric and I don't know how I don't understand where my powers have come from. Like warlocks, I don't, like, I've made this deal and I don't really know what's going on. Like barbarians, I've discovered that when I get really angry, I get really buff and like I hulk out a bit.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that makes, especially in a campaign, like in a one shot, do whatever you want in a one shot. Like, it does not matter. So I think in a campaign, it's good to play it like that, and it helps other people build into the relationships and the story as well.
You could even do a halfway point kind of thing, because the way I kind of did my rogue, it's kind of like he spent most of his life training, but his training got him to level 1. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it took him that long to sort of
Yeah.
learn how to do all these things, and then he became level 1. Then through the course of the adventure, he gets better and better and better, because that's how leveling up obviously works. So you could even do it like that. You can still have the whole thing of, I'm really cool, and I spent 20 bajillion years training to do something, but just keep in mind that training doesn't make you a god or something, you know.
What makes you a god is level 20.
Yeah, when you're unkillable,
Yes.
basically.
Well, I think you and I, Jacob, were discussing, we were watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and we were saying that if you were to look at Simon the Sorcerer's stat block, his charisma is probably not very high because he's very awkward and not very good at conversations, and couldn't woo his love the first time round, and that's why he's a bit of a naff sorcerer, is because
Yeah.
charisma is what he would use to make his spells strong. So and we were saying that was a really good concept, actually, is that actually he's a rubbish sorcerer because he's just not very charismatic.
Yeah, and I just had a thought then, because at the end he ends up getting like on a date with the tiefling, doesn't he? And I've now got in my head canon that because of the whole adventure they went on, he had an ASI and put it in charisma, and then that's why he's a little bit better at the end, and he can speak to her properly.
And that's on leveling up.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give? What's your one key piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's wanting to take the plunge and come into the game?
Join Crit Happens and play a game.
It's good advice.
Yeah.
Jake and James?
Don't overthink. Just enjoy the silliness, and don't worry. Your first few characters will be cringy. They all are. You'll learn to love it, and just have fun rolling dice and failing and having a laugh.
I'd say the most important bit is like be yourself. Be yourself, and if you're at the right table, then that's enough. You know what I mean? Like you'll find the right people to play with, and you can just do what you want and enjoy yourself. And that's what it is at the end of the day. You're playing a game. You're there to enjoy it. So play it how you want to play it, as long as it's not at the detriment of other people at the table. Play it how you want to play and enjoy yourself.
What do you think, Pip?
There are no stupid questions, only stupid answers.
I think I would say, if you're new, do ask for advice and actually do listen to your DM, your dungeon master, and just be aware of the separation between the players and the characters. The people at the table are not necessarily playing their characters as they would react to that situation as people. So you have to have that separation and just don't take it personally if a DM says to you, look, this is a cool idea, but it won't quite work in this setting, maybe try this instead. Just work with the people at the table and you'll all have a really good time, I think. I think as well, it's important to note that if you do join a campaign and you get into it a little bit and you think, actually, I'm really not vibing with this character I've created, there is always the option to retire the character and come in as something else in discussion with your DM. And that doesn't mean they have to die. They might say, my planet needs me, and disappear. There are all sorts of, they can have, essentially, if you've got a good DM, they can have the exit that you want for them. If you want them to go out in a blaze of glory, then, speak to your DM. But you always have the option to say, actually, I want to try something different and come in with a different character. Okay, well, thank you everybody so much for joining us. Thank you to our panel of guests, and please do come and check out our Crit Happens Discord. You can find us on Twitch, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify. Come and have a look, come and get involved, and if you are a new player, just jump in and join us.